Alright, everybody. As many of you guys may know, I am a gamer. I love me some video games. I've been playing video games for as long as I can remember. In fact, the first video game I ever played, I know the name of it. It was Diablo 2. Diablo 2 was the first video game I ever played in my entire life. Assuming the stories told by my family are accurate. Yeah. Pretty pog. I've been playing video games for a very long time. You could even call me a capital G gamer. I love games, okay? I'm a seasoned gamer, okay? Millions of hours playing video games. I love video games. However, video games just so happen to be the primary source of entertainment of a whole lot of cis, straight, white boys. Not exclusively that demographic, but it's hard to find a cis, straight, white boy who doesn't play video games, is really all I'm saying here. You get what I'm saying? Like, video games are a pretty go-to hobby of the straight, cishet white boy, right? We can all agree on this. I am a straight, cishet white boy, in fact. I'm living proof that, that this demographic tends to gravitate towards video games and vice versa. And because of that, the right has recognized video games as a prime target for basically politicizing and radicalizing the audience of. Basically, since Gamergate, we have had evidence that the right-wing establishment has been making a push to use gaming and gaming culture to popularize conservatism among young, straight white men. This particularly started with the exposure of Steve Bannon and his use of Gamergate, his outright admitting that Gamergate was literally instrumental to the election of Donald Trump, and that Steve Bannon himself actively engaged in, used Breitbart, and he used the other resources he had access to push Gamergate talking points to the masses and popularize it, because he recognized Gamergate and the politicization of video games to young cishet white men as a good way to radicalize them to the right. And even though Gamergate has pretty much, been over for years now, and we're now in a new age of right-wing cultural dominance, the right hasn't given up video games as a sort of target of their propaganda, but the way that they go after them nowadays is really bizarre. It used to be that video games would come out and they would be popular, and lefties would come along and criticize them for not having enough representation. Like, The Witcher 3 would come out, and there wouldn't be enough non-white people in it, and then all the anti-SJW YouTubers would respond to BuzzFeed articles about how The Witcher 3 is too white. And the idea was that the anti-SJWs, the, right-wingers, were defending these popular video games and their dev studios from the demands of these lefties, these SJWs, demanding that they change their games to fit a political narrative. But now, and the response, of course, was always, go make your own games if you want your games to be woke. But now, well, we've seen over the course of the last half-decade or so as video games and these video game publishers have made a very obvious effort to present themselves as far more progressive, because that's where all the money is. And, well, the right hasn't been too happy about this, because as it turns out, they didn't actually mean it when they said, make your own video games. In fact, when they said make your own video games, they meant just shut up. We just don't want minorities in video games. Because now there are a lot of minorities in video games, and the right-wing perspective has changed from let's defend these games and developers and studios against, criticism from the left to let's criticize these game developers and studios for being, in our perception, too woke for us. And that is where the go woke, go broke craze basically started, where people like No Bullshit and The Quartering started their grift of calling every single new thing that has black people in it, or women in it, or trans people in it, or gay people in it, evil and woke, to an audience of people who just want to see someone rant about how minorities in media are bad. That said, Sydney Watson, of all people, very uncharacteristically, has jumped on board with this bandwagon, making a video called Woke Developers Are Destroying Gaming. I like how it's not even, woke publishers either, because, Sydney Watson clearly doesn't know jack shit about video games, so instead of the title being, woke publishers are destroying games, it's woke developers are destroying games. I don't know, like, how super gaming affiliated a lot of you in chat are, or how, like, knowledgeable about gaming a lot of you will be, but, like, for those of you that don't know, generally when it comes to criticizing video games, it is considered a faux pas to target the developers, because the developers just work for the publisher and the overall game dev studio and the company. Like, they have input and they have power depending on, like, the studio itself, but typically, in broader gaming, the devs are just manual laborers, essentially. They have talent that they use to get work done. They aren't the ones that make the overall decisions for what the game is, though. That's like an entire team of marketers and shit, and, like, there's, like, people at desks at a big table that decide what is the best action to take to most profitably, you know, create the next game. Like, creative vision exists. I'm not trying to say there is no creative vision for devs in, like, the AAA gaming industry and, like, modern gaming, but, like, for the most part, it is considered faux pas to blame the problems on video games these days, regardless of what they are, on devs, because the devs, like, categorically would not be responsible for anything you would view as a problem. Like, they're not responsible. Like, the devs are doing their best. Like, if a game comes out glitchy and unfinished, it's because the studio, or not the studio, the publisher, pushed them to get the game out at a certain date. The devs want to release a good, finished game. They're working hard on that shit. It's the suits at the top that are making these decisions that you would view as bad. So already, from, like, the title of the video, we're making, like, a traditional gaming faux pas of, like, attacking game devs for games being woke. So game devs aren't allowed to make their own games now? Like, if you're criticizing the publishers, like the big companies and the suits at the top, that's one thing. But now we're criticizing the devs? Okay.
All the time, but this really is never ending. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. Now, for those of you who don't know, I play video games in my free time because it's a way to switch my brain off. It's also very cathartic.
Oh yeah? You're a woman who plays video games? Name 20 of them. Name 20 video games, Sydney Watson. Listen, Sydney Watson fights to defend sexism at every turn. I can be sexist towards her.
So I don't commit murder. I'm just kidding, Mr. FBI man. Just kidding. But seriously, gaming really is a great way to just tune the world out. And when I've had a particularly bad day, or I've been looking into something extremely messed up...
I do not believe that Sydney Watson plays video games. There's absolutely no way Sydney Watson plays video games. Terrible Shu impression? Yeah, I mean, like, Sydney Watson and Shuon had basically both filled the niche of, like, right-wing e-girl. You know, like, dudes just want to hear, like, a girl tell them that, or a woman tell them that their oppression is valid and that women are so cringe these days.
It's always good to be able to just sit down and completely tune everything out and not have to be exposed to more politics. Some people choose to read books.
God, she's going down the video games are meant to be like escapism route. So basically, there was this big issue. The reason why these arguments aren't as popular anymore and, like, the Gamergate era died out was because gamers as a whole wanted gaming to be taken seriously. It was very, very common, and it's still true to this day, that gamers have this complex of feeling like their favorite genre isn't taken seriously. That video games, as a storytelling medium and as an entertainment medium, are this niche, exclusive, misunderstood thing that society just doesn't get and has been maligned and misrepresented and misunderstood for a really long time. That is basically, like, the view that gamers like to the perspective that gamers like to take, right? Here, there we go. That is, like, the perspective that gamers generally like to take. They want video games to be taken seriously as an art form, but at the same time, these right-wing figures stand in stark contrast to these video games being judged and reviewed and analyzed like an art form. And so people who wanted gaming to be taken seriously, people who wanted things like the show The Last of Us to be able to exist, really quickly realized that, oh, oh, like, getting super upset about people criticizing, like, anything about a video game is not really, like, allowing the games to be taken seriously as a genre, you know?
Others choose to watch Netflix. I choose to throw axes at dead people.
What game?
So you can imagine the collective...
How funny would it be if that was, like, footage of God of War taken off... It probably is footage of God of War taken off of YouTube. She does not have a capture card. Also, this is God of War 2018. I know this video is 3 months old, but the most recent God of War game is God of War Ragnarok, and this is God of War 2018. This is that opening set, like, area right by Kratos and Atreus' house, where you have to do the puzzle where you pull that chain down, and there's a little spinny wheel there, and you have to throw the axe at it to make this gate stay up. There's a little hidden room off to the side here as well. I know this exact room. It's from God of War 2018. It's not even the same area from God of War Ragnarok, because you revisit this room in God of War Ragnarok. This is the version of it from 2018. This is the 2018 layout as well. So, yeah, also, God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok especially are so fucking woke. Oh my god. God of War Ragnarok and God of War 2018 are literally the story of Kratos taking his journey to become, instead of being, like, the literal face of toxic masculinity, like, gaming, power fantasy, like, main characters, going from being that to becoming, like, basically a superhero. Like, Kratos is basically a superhero by the end of God of War Ragnarok. Like, he is in the Norse realm, a fucking superhero by the end. And at the beginning, he is the face of, like, ultra toxic masculinity, dude bro, power fantasy characters. The new God of War games are so woke that the creator of them, or at least the director of the first game, as well as the director of the second game, different director, have both said in interviews that they went into these games with their perspectives as older men, as fathers, into these games, realizing that things like violence, things like toxic masculinity, they literally use these words, things like, basically, literally the right lost their shit over these games when they came out because they were so overtly progressive in their messaging. Not only that, but Thor, and also, to be fair, you know what? Maybe she is a gamer, and she refuses to play past God of War 2018 because Ragnarok has Fat Thor, and they got really mad about Fat Thor. A lot of you guys may forget, but when God of War Ragnarok was announced and they showed the Thor design being literally accurate to Norse, like, descriptions of Thor being, like, a big, like, bodybuilder, like, fat, but still super strong and built, like, warrior, they lost their mind over that. Also, Angrboda is black. They lost their mind over that too. No way Sydney Watson would even touch God of War Ragnarok. How much must that suck? If she actually played God of War 2018 and liked it and she's a gamer, how much must it suck to not be able to play the second game because it's too woke for you? There's black people in it. There's fat people in it. There's women doing things in it that are strong. Like, God. She couldn't even touch God of War Ragnarok. She just doesn't get to know what happens in the sequel if she actually did play the original game. That's so sad.
So you can imagine the collective...
No. Thor's build is literally like if I bring up a picture of the real-life world's strongest man, the right literally lost their shit over this. Here's a picture of Thor in God of War Ragnarok. Okay? Here's a picture of Thor in God of War Ragnarok. Here's a picture of the real-life world's strongest man, whose name is also Thor. It almost looks like they took inspiration from the world's real strongest man, who's a Scandinavian bodybuilder named Thor. Maybe it's like they had some real-life inspiration there, and it's not woke to have fat characters in a video game, but the right lost their fucking mind over it. They lost their absolute fucking shit over it. Just like Sydney Watson's about to lose her mind over literally equally inconsequential shit.
Disappointment felt when leftists make sure to get their creepy little tendrils into one of the only things left that we can actually enjoy.
I forgot how, like, overtly, like, scripted and clearly pandery Sydney Watson's content is. Like, there is not even a shred of sentiment in there. That's Eddie Hall, wrong guy. Oh, my bad, my bad. Thor Thorson, or whatever the fuck his name is, the other guy, the guy who plays the Mountain in Game of Thrones, was the strongest man in the world, and he also has the same body type. It's like all the strongest dudes in the world all have the same body type as Thor in God of War Ragnarok. It's crazy.
More and more as games are released or even updated and remastered, you see more and more political messaging in games that otherwise didn't have it before. And it goes beyond that too. It isn't just political messaging. Sometimes—
God, I hope she, like, uses Metal Gear Solid as an example of an apolitical game she remembers playing as a kid or something.
Sometimes there is a time and place for that. But this goes into other realms of social conditioning that we haven't seen before. I mean, realistically, we probably have—
Oh yeah, for those who don't know, Sydney Watson is a Nazi, like full-on white nationalist Nazi. She also, she was the lady, I believe, who claimed that, she was sexually assaulted by immigrants, and that the police refused to do anything because the police were afraid of being seen as racist. So they couldn't do anything about her being sexually assaulted by these evil brown immigrants because the cops were afraid of being seen as racist. And then Vosh said, I think Vosh replied to that because he saw that claim, and he was like, that sounds unlikely. And then the right went after Vosh, claiming that he was a rape apologist, because the right really cares about, you know, women's right to feel safe and not at risk of being sex trafficked or assaulted, you know? The right, the people who are currently rallying to defend Andrew Tate, the guy who is actively being charged with sex trafficking.
Seen it before.
And admitted to it on video to his audience and explained how he would do the sex trafficking.
I'm just probably noticing it now. Unnecessary political and social messaging is already pushed in basically every other medium, whether it be entertainment, on social media, through streaming services, celebrities. Take your pick, really.
She just means, like, brown people and gay people existing.
Take your pick. It's like a plague.
My toxic trait is that I feel like a literal god when I look this hot.
And some of us were—
That was a TikTok by a random person. If you're gonna try to argue that, like, wokeness has kind of, like, seeped into every facet of media that you consume, showing a random TikTok from a person's private social media account where you're allowed to post anything you want is not evidence that our society has fallen to the lefty agenda and that everywhere you look in every form of media is, like, that's a TikTok. What's that have to do with gaming, movies, TV shows, books, anything?
Stupid enough to think that video games might continue to be more or less safe from that. But we were wrong. There are countless games that have gotten the same woke treatment. A continued sore spot for a lot of—
Are we seriously shitting on The Last of Us Part 2? Right after The Last of Us show came out? Dude, it is so wild to see, like, how the bias against or for a certain thing online is like, dictated by the political leanings of the internet. So The Last of Us Part 2 literally broke sales records for sales on PlayStation. When The Last of Us 2 came out, it was the world record-breaking, like, most sold PlayStation game of all time on opening day. The Last of Us 2 was one of the biggest game releases ever, period. And especially in hindsight, its overall reception has been very positive. But if you look online, even today, but especially back when the game first came out, it was nothing but negativity. You could not look anywhere without seeing overwhelming negativity. Whether it be people who are going full mask off with talking about how they were mad about the game having, like, gay people in it and stuff, and having, like, a trans character or whatever. You had people who were just open about that being why they hated the game, but then you had people trying to find other excuses for why it was bad. And they were always really bizarre. My favorite is, like, when you'd hear an excuse about why the game is bad from someone who clearly didn't play the game or, like, even watch a Let's Play of it, particularly because the game hadn't been out for as long as the game takes to beat. The game had been review bombed an hour after it came out. Tens of thousands of negative reviews on The Last of Us Part 2, an hour after it came out. The game takes tens of hours to beat, dozens of hours to beat, even if you're rushing it. It's a long game. I don't think any of these brave gamers were beating the game somehow in an hour, determining it was bad, and leaving an honest negative review. I think what's happened is there is a massive culture of little whiny babies in the gaming community that lose their shit and try to destroy any form of media that has marginalized people represented in it, because they need to destroy any form of normalization of those marginalized people. It's why they stand against any form of inclusion. They're not against this because they see it as some artificially injected politics. Ellie was gay in the first game. This wasn't a Last of Us 2 thing. Like, Ellie was gay in the first game. The game has always had, like, minorities in it, and it's always had a marginally progressive message. A openly progressive message. It's just that when The Last of Us 2 came out, there was now a culture war centered around picking apart every new piece of media that comes out, finding anything that can be seen as offensive to right-wing sensibilities, and claiming that it is now morally degrading to our culture.
People is The Last of Us 2, which basically simultaneously gave up, but also tried too hard, all at the same time.
This game is overwhelmingly well received, and literally broke sales records, like one of the best performing games of all time. The right continuously has tried to, like, to this day, as she's doing right now, the right tries to claim this game failed, like it went broke or it failed, like, commercially at all. It did not. It performed way better than the first game. It is one of the most successful games of all time. Like, there is literally no quantity by which this game failed.
As far as the storyline went. Actually, in recent news, you guys are gonna love this. The Last of Us TV series that's coming out has introduced some race swap characters. Can you believe it? And I expect the whole thing will just be something akin to this.
Has the planet gone mad?
How well did that age, guys? This video came out right before The Last of Us show came out. That didn't age too well, did it? I wonder how she felt when the Bill and Frank episode came out. The episode entirely centered on the gay couple and their love story, and it is like one of the most highly rated episodes of television of all time. I wonder how she reacted when she found out about that. I wonder how she reacted when she saw Bill and Frank trending on Twitter with like 200,000 tweets on the night that episode came out.
I've recently noticed a lot of forced messaging in games that I like and in franchises that I like, and I just sort of feel like, can I just not?
She probably loved the Bill and Frank episode secretly. Okay. Assuming my theory that Sydney Watson is either gay or trans but in the closet is not true. Because she's one of those, like, she's one of those conservative women that keeps on saying, if I was born, you know, a few decades earlier, I would have been labeled as trans when I was a kid because I was a tomboy. And it's like, maybe you would have been. Maybe you would have been. Assuming that's not the case, I would assume that a straight woman seeing two guys, like, making out or having a sex scene or whatever would be enjoyable for a straight woman, presumably. That would be my guess.
Not enjoy anything? In recent years.
Do straight women like watching gay porn where it's like two guys? Because straight guys like watching lesbian porn where it's two girls. Does that work the other way around? Yes? Okay, just checking.
The Days Gone writer and creative director blamed woke reviewers for the game's low critic scores. He tweeted several reasons for the low reviews, with the final one being that woke reviewers couldn't handle a gruff, white biker looking at his date's butt. I mean, he's probably not wrong. Now, obviously,
Did she just defend a guy complaining that his game didn't perform well commercially because of woke reviewers? So we're starting a video about how wokeness is ruining gaming, and we're starting it off with a example of a bad game where the creator of the game blamed the poor performance of said game on woke reviewers as a scapegoat. And you're just throwing that in at the beginning? That, like, okay, If you think that makes your side look good here, then sure.
Some people have pushed back here and said, no, it was just a not very good game, and maybe that's the truth of the matter. But I think the misunderstood point here is that what users want is often extremely different to what developers and reviewers want. An article from 2019 made note of several reviewers who complained about the game's white protagonist. They also complained about having to kill child zombies because... okay. Another article noted, if Deacon St. John, who is the main character in Days Gone, was a bisexual biker boy who preached for the greater good, the game would have still been the same. It would have still revolved around a drab world that many struggled to care for. I found this article excerpt to be particularly not intelligent because what this...
How is this video this bad? How is she this bad at making her point? She's literally using an example of an article saying, even if the main character wasn't a straight white man, the game's just kind of shit. It wouldn't, like, even if you made the character a bisexual biker screaming out about diversity and inclusion and equality from the hilltops, the game honestly wouldn't be that interesting because it's just fundamentally not a good game. Like, how is that? Like, I think you wanted a clip. I think what you wanted was an article saying that the game would have been good if the main character wasn't a straight white man? I feel like that's what you're looking for, was Days Gone, that scam game? No, you're thinking of the day before.
This writer fails to understand is that, yes, the user experience likely would have been the same, where the user would have found the world to be drab, but as far as critic reviews go, they probably would have loved it for all the aforementioned things. And that's the point, right? The gaming world is...
The game reviewer you're referencing literally says the opposite of what you're claiming, and your response is, yeah, but I bet if they did have that character, the game reviewers would love the game and rate it highly. In response to game reviewers rating the game lowly and saying even if it had progressive values, it would still be a shit game because there's just nothing there at the core. Does she think she's making the argument that she is making? What is she doing?
Is becoming just like other forms of entertainment, superficially inflated and directed by progressive woke lunatics who don't actually care about the game, but the game's messaging. Which brings me to Modern Warfare 2. Now,
remember guys, remember, the right despise the concept of media having a message. They hate the concept of media having a message. It's why they fight so hard to make sure that any analysis of media remains on the most surface level it can possibly be.
I am acutely aware of the fact that this isn't necessarily hot news because it's been a couple weeks since this was being talked about, but honestly, I didn't really see a lot of coverage about this particular issue, so I wanted to address it. But before you once again board my hell gondola and I potentially ruin your whole day, let's hear from today's sponsor.
Dude, these people make so much money. These people make so much fucking money slinging shit. Oh my god. Oh my fucking god. The shilling. These people make a fucking embarrassing amount of money. Like, the sponsors, the ad revenue from the massively inflated viewership that conservatives have online proportional to lefties, the fucking donations, the Patreon I'm sure she has that's very successful, the fucking, fucking destroys its own, obsidian. The, what's it called? The, like dark money organizations like Daily Wire that are willing to pay you shit tons of money to just toe the line. God, it's so fucking shameless. And it's so obvious. It's just there.
Blissy. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The Sydney was dreaming from her side then. Sleep die endlessly because Call of Duty Warfare 2 December 16 to
Okay.
ensure they arrive in time. The new Call of Duty called Modern Warfare 2, I don't know why my mouth can't say that, came out at the end of October. Call of Duty is a franchise of military games that involve campaign-style gameplay or online multiplayer gameplay
Famously
where if you're
apolitical.
anything like me, you just die endlessly because
Okay, I just realized. She started this by talking about how video games were a thing that you could play to take your mind off stuff and they weren't political. And now an example of a video game franchise she's using is Call of Duty. So we have literally reverted to, unironically, I miss when video games were apolitical, like Call of Duty Black Ops. Remember that? Remember when video games were apolitical? And it's like very clear what they mean by political is just there being minorities in it? Because the only thing that's actually tangibly changed about video games in the last, like, couple decades has been hardware, the amount of, like, inclusion of minority groups in the media, and, like, the trends overall. Like, other than that, like, video games, like these games have not gotten any less political, you know? Like, the Call of Duty games are fundamentally the same games in their messaging and everything as they've always been. They're war games. It's a war narrative. They're inherently political.
because the kids in China are better than you at this. I can't stress enough that Call of Duty is a military game. You run around shooting things, throwing grenades, insulting everyone around you as a form of male bonding. It is not, by any stretch of the imagination, warm and fuzzy. This isn't the adult equivalent of Barbie Race and Ride. Although given enough time, it probably will be. So in recent news, the Modern Warfare developers decided to add some things to this game that left people feeling a little confused and a little upset. Because apparently if you make any sort of entertainment, then you inevitably catch the Netflix, Marvel, and Disney bug. Stupid. Military game Call of Duty
You mean Marvel, for one, Marvel is owned by Disney, so Marvel is Disney. You named the same thing twice there. Marvel and Disney are the same thing, fundamentally. Both of them being extraordinarily successful. I don't know what you mean. Like, you talk about this bug like it's a bad thing. Marvel and Disney are very, very successful, and for all of its faults, the only problem that people actually have with Netflix is the fact that they're making stupid changes like banning account sharing and, like, canceling popular shows that people like. Popular shows, by the way, that you would probably consider woke. The shows that are keeping Netflix alive right now are shows like Euphoria, which I'm pretty sure we've watched multiple conservative content creators rant about how it's, like, inappropriate and how people shouldn't be watching it, and it's bad for society. Like, I don't... They on one hand argue that everything they're against is super popular and degrading society because of its overwhelming, unstoppable popularity, and on the other hand, they're the silent majority and everybody is just trying to live their lives, and the left and these progressive values won't get out of everyone's faces. Like, which one is it? Is everyone going crazy progressive and you can't escape this shit now and everyone's crazy progressive and this is what society is you know, all in favor of? Or is it like a minority of loud woke people pushing this onto everybody, and it's like it's literally different depending on what video you watch from the same figures.
Goes woke. No American flag, 22 gay pride flags, burning US flag, BLM allowed, but not WLM or FJB. What a headline. What the hell is WLM? Women like men? Oh no, I can see why that was banned. No, it's White Lives Matter. Oh, well, that makes a lot more sense. Stupid. Call
Rose don't know. Sydney Watson definitely knows this because the White Lives Matter is an Australian thing. Let's talk about the origin of that slogan in case any of you guys weren't caught up on it. Because the right, basically the whole point of, like, Nazi trolling and euphemisms is to, like, take a statement that sounds so unobjectionably, like, true and agreeable that you can just spout it around, but it means a different message to the people that are meant to, you know, hear it and understand it. So White Lives Matter is a white supremacist phrase that originated in early 2015 as a racist response to the Black Lives Matter movement, which arose to protest against police brutality against African Americans and garnered considerable publicity in 2014 for protests in Ferguson, Missouri, following the shooting death of Michael Brown at the hands of a Ferguson police officer. Since 2015, white supremacists in several states, especially members of the Texas-based white supremacist group Aryan Renaissance Society, have promoted the slogan White Lives Matter with flyers and protests, forming a loose campaign to popularize the phrase. By 2016, other white supremacist groups, including the Ku Klux Klan, were also using the slogan, and it soon became a staple among white supremacist mantras, continuing even after the original campaigners ceased their activities. So yeah, in case you guys were, somehow not aware, White Lives Matter is a very well-known Nazi dog whistle.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, the latest installment in the franchise's runaway success, and was released on October 28, 2022, features not one, but 22 pride flags and no American flags as a call sign.
Base.
Call signs in COD are basically one of the ways that you can distinguish yourself from other players in the game, and in days gone by...
Dumb bitch doesn't know what she's talking about. Nobody uses call signs in fucking Call of Duty as a fucking as a thing that denotes who you are to make you feel unique. People use them to make funny images. Like, one of the most popular ones in Black Ops was to make a, for your, emblem thing. People would make it something funny. It's always something funny. It's not like some, personal thing. It's the same thing you do for your emblem. You make it a picture of a dick or titties. People loved making their Black Ops 2 emblem, titties. Bottom tit. You know what I'm talking about? Who played Black Ops 2 back in the day and saw the people who would make their emblem? Because you had all these different custom shapes. If you put enough time into it, you could literally make, really detailed art. So they would make, the most popular one was, underboob. It would be, a girl's underboob, right below the nipple, and then the stomach, and a bit of the thighs, and that was pretty much their emblem. That was a very common one. Dicks were pretty common. People just made all sorts of, random funny shit. It was always for trolling.
Many of the flags that were available were country flags, not pride flags. Now, of the 29 flag options in this new game, 22 of them are pride flags. There are 22.
Well, none of them are national flags, actually. None of the flags there were national flags. They're all cool designs and pride flags. Yeah, based.
Who of them? We're talking about 22 pride flags for sexualities that
Well, no, they're not all for sexualities. There's the trans pride flag, there's the bisexual pride flag, there's the gay pride flag, lesbian pride flag, bi pride flag, pan pride flag. She's literally just mad that there are a lot of people that exist outside of categories that are straight or cis. That's the thing she's mad about. That categories exist outside of cis or straight, and they have formed communities with flags that represent them. She is mad that they are visible. That's literally all it is.
I didn't even know existed. 22 sexuality, what? Our species is 100% gonna die out.
So
Yeah, if conservatives have anything to say about it, we will. You know what I find really nice about reacting to conservative propaganda content? It's really painful to watch, but at least I know when I look at one of their videos, I know that at least 2 or 3 minutes of the total timestamp is actually dedicated to just a sponsor that I'll be able to skip over. So it's really not that much. It's really not that much videos after all, or it's really not that much content to watch after all to deal with, because it's just so much of it is just sponsor.
Just bought the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and I only have one gripe so far since playing the game. So I just started playing.
I like how you can see the little Butters from South Park head, nodding on the bottom there. It's cut off, but you can see that's Butters' head from South Park.
Playing online last night, and for anybody who's ever played a Call of Duty game, you can customize your online characters. You can customize what they call calling cards, which is kind of what you see in the background here. So from the outset of this, you have 29 different calling cards that you can choose from. 7 of those are random, Call of Duty type calling cards. 22 out of the 29 calling cards that you can pick from the outset are all pride flags. Nothing against a pride flag. You want to fly your
I have nothing against it, but why is it here? Why are there so many? Why do they exist?
pride flag? That's fine. But where the is the American flag? Activision. It's a military-based game, and you don't have one American flag in there?
Jokes aside, this is an issue that developers run into all the time these days.
I thought representation didn't matter, though. Wait, why does representation matter all of a sudden? Why does the American flag need to be represented? Why does it matter? But these people have been arguing for years that representation shouldn't matter. What matters is the story and the gameplay. And if you're super focused on politics, this is literally them focused on politics. The American flag being in the game would be a political statement. So they removed it because it's too political. They took politics out of the game. What are you talking about here? In reality here, this is the right demonstrating their very clear bias. They lose their fucking mind at the slightest hint of them not being represented in everything they consume, but will absolutely call you a crybaby bitch if you want to have, like, one trans person in a movie.
They prefer to make games for their staff rather than for the audiences that actually buy them.
Ah, yes. One of the biggest industries in existence. How much is the gaming industry worth right now? Let me check really fast. Let's check. Gaming industry worth. Let's see how much the gaming industry is worth right now. $372 billion US dollars in 2023. The revenue in video games segment, in the video games sector is projected to reach $372 billion in 2023. Yeah, I'm going to guess that this $372 billion industry is not just making video games that are meant for, like, their staff and, like, their fellow SJW friends to play. I'm going to guess that these are employees working for massive corporations and companies and publishers that are doing their jobs and making games that are performing well, and if the games perform well, they make more games like that generally. The gaming industry definitely has a lot of problems. Trust me, I could rant for hours, but none of them have to do with wokeness. And when conservatives try to hyper-focus on these problems, they actually end up hurting themselves and their ability to reach gamers. Right now, for the most part, gamers aren't really upset about, like, wokeness in video games as much. The vast majority of gamers are upset with the fact that video games are coming out in an unreleased or unfinished, poorly put together state with pay-to-win, microtransactions, and all sorts of other bullshit systems put in there by these large publishers that want to, you know, make sure their bottom dollar is as, like, high as possible. This has nothing to do with wokeness in games, but the right doesn't talk about these things because these things are capitalistic aspects of gaming, and these are things the right is in favor of. The things that are ruining gaming right now are symptoms of capitalism.
The people who keep them employed so that they can drink their soy milk lattes and vote for Biden. People were also pointing out that there is...
I guess if you're a chick, like, you don't really have to, like, in the right, you don't really have to, like, you just have to toe the party line and be a woman. You don't have to actually be decent at, like, making even the slightest burn or argument, because this video has not done even the slightest effort so far at convincing me of the point it's trying to make. I'm actively being pushed away from her positions, even from the perspective of like a chud gamer bro. I feel like I'm pushed away from her takes here by this video. And not only that, but, like, did we just get a drinking soy and voting Biden dunk on lefties? Lefties drink soy and vote for Biden. That is the level of, like, dunking qualification you have to be a popular conservative woman online? Really? And the right say we're the ones that like affirmative action.
Isn't a possibility to select an American flag, or any other country flag for that matter, as a cosign, but the only American flag that they found in the game is on fire, burning on the ground. Very good. This actually reminded me a little bit of the controversy surrounding the Spider-Man game for PC that was happening in August, where someone made a mod that changed all the pride flags in the game to American flags. The mod was labeled homophobic, it was deleted, and the creator
of that mod openly talked about how they did that to remove the F-slur agenda from the game.
It was banned from mod hosting websites because the mod creator also referred to the pride flag as stupid. One mod
Yeah, they also did that too.
hosting site responded on Twitter saying that ModDB is an inclusive environment for all and we do not permit targeting marginalized groups. Our content moderation is largely automated, but when identified, we have a zero tolerance policy for this kind of content.
You know what this reminds me of a lot? This reminds me a lot of when the right spent, during the Gamergate era, the right was like super pro-free speech, free speech, we love free speech, anti-censorship, the left wants to censor you. But then, protesters started burning pride flags. Or not pride flags, American flags, not pride flags. Protesters started burning American flags for BLM. Particularly after the whole Colin Kaepernick thing is when that started to happen. You started to see a lot of BLM protesters burning American flags in completely safe, legal demonstrations. The right's response to this was overwhelmingly to call for the criminalization of burning the American pride flag in protest. All these free speech conservatives who'd built their entire platforms on being the ones who were super pro-free speech were now calling for, like, left-wing protesters to be arrested for burning their own American flags they bought at a store because they view it as hate speech. You had every anti-SJW chud YouTuber ever debating on this. And it really hurt their reputation. Quite a few right-wingers, like right-wing skeptic YouTubers debated Destiny on this back in 2017 and got blown the fuck out because Destiny was basically just like, you say you're super pro-free speech and protesting, like, burning the American flag is protesting. And they'd be like, no, but they're protesting the very thing that gives them the right to protest. And Destiny would just be like, yeah, that's what America's all about. America is so free that you're allowed to protest the system that gives you the right to protest that system. And they all got blown the fuck out because the idea of, like, criminalizing burning the American flag for protest while also simultaneously lambasting the left as, like, anti-free speech censorship people is, it was a really bad move for them. It was one of those, like, keystone events that helped along in the fall of the skeptic community.
But to be honest with you, and just, you know, because I'm obviously a pessimist and a negative Nancy about a lot of these things, I still think this situation would have gone the same way, regardless if the mod creator referred to pride flags as stupid or not. I still think that they would have seen this, decided that it was an attack on...
Like, why...
on homosexuality and on pride, and then...
Well, it is. Like, say, like, going out of your way to make a mod that, like, deletes pride flags from the game and replaces them with American flags not only implies that, like, you know, it's creating a resource to, like, exterminate any reference to gay people from the game, because that's, you can imagine the type of person that wants that version of the game, but also the creator of the mod has outright said that they think the pride flag is stupid and they think it's, like, a symbol for, like, groomer F-slurs, as they believe they said. And then on top of that, the implication is that the pride flag stands in opposition of America. And then on top of all of that, would Sydney Watson not agree that the mod for Hogwarts Legacy that added trans flags to the game for every tapestry and painting, that's a real mod, by the way. There's a mod that you can get for Hogwarts Legacy on PC that turns every tapestry, every, like, sign, everything that could, like, display an image into a trans pride flag. Sydney Watson would lose her mind over this. She would criticize this as, like, that mod as being, like, basically the reverse of what this mod was, because she recognizes that in both cases, this is somebody, like, putting their politics into a game using a mod and making it available for people who agree with those politics. Only in one hand, it's somebody who hates gay people and wants them, like, sanitized out of media, who made a mod to, like, get rid of all the pride flags. And in the other scenario, it's a mod that just adds a bunch of trans flags to the game, replacing random assets that had no other, like, meaning outside of that. Like, they aren't a political symbol or anything. It's like, these are, like, one thing is objectively good, the trans flag mod, and I can explain why it's good. And the pride flag extermination mod for the Spider-Man game is bad, and I can explain why it's bad. And both are the things they are for the same reason.
Subsequently removed the mod anyway because no American flags allowed. It feels like this is so present in so many different areas of the entertainment space or the creation of entertainment space, where a huge portion of people view any sort of nationalism as a huge problem. And the funny thing is, these people, these developers, these creators would rather give us 22 pride flag options rather than letting people select a flag that represents their country or a country that they like. Because it's not like these pride flags represent a very small portion of the population in the first place. And an even smaller portion
of- there's a bunch, there's other, like, symbols you can use for your, like, banner if you don't want to use the pride flags. Also, they add new ones over time. Call of Duty is a game as a service. It always has been. The game updates over time. They add things, they change things. So I have no doubt that new cosmetics, like banners, are probably already added to the game because this is an older video. But, like, if you're a game developer, if you're a publisher and you're putting out a popular game like Call of Duty and you have to hit your release date, you're probably just going to release, like, a handful of banners on launch and then release the rest of them over time, especially if you can find a way to wring money out of people for it. Like, I mean, it's a Call of Duty game. They're going to find a way to wring money out of people to get the American flag. Like, does Sydney Watson really think that Activision would give... that fucking Activision would give Call of Duty players the American flag for free? You think they wouldn't find a way to juice every last penny out of their player base? We're talking about Activision here.
The population who were playing Call of Duty. I love modern society so much. It absolutely does not feel like I'm being crushed to death by stupidity. But Modern Warfare 2's...
I really wish these YouTubers weren't all, like, grifters that are just shelling out, like, slinging bullshit to their audience for money. Because if these people were actually honest, it would be so fucking funny. How fucking funny would it be if Sydney Watson actually, like, believed any of the shit she, like, says she does, and is actually this afraid of this supposed, like, trans onslaught on like, American human rights and society. Like, imagine if she actually believed in that shit, and not only actually believed in that shit, but also, also actively lives in fear and pain at the fact that society is getting more progressive. She doesn't. Like, Ben Shapiro doesn't wake up in the morning upset that society is getting more progressive. He knows that it is. He doesn't care. In fact, the more progressive society gets, the more alienated conservative people feel, and the more likely they are to, like, huddle around conservative content creators that make them feel like they're not alone. So as conservatism gets less popular, the conservatives that are less will just get more radical, more alienated, more isolated, and feel more lonely. And they're going to seek out this type of content more because it's going to be the only source of camaraderie they're going to be able to find as society gets less and less accepting of these people's bullshit.
Game changes don't stop there. People have pointed out that you can make your clan name BLM, but if you try to use WLM or FJB, these are prohibited due to profanity. I did it!
Based.
I lived long enough to see White Lives Matter become profanity. Or
well, I mean, I just read the entire origin of the phrase. Like, Sydney Watson really doesn't want you to know where the phrase White Lives Matter comes from. She really wants you to just kind of assume it means what it sounds like it means, which is just White Lives Matter. That's what it sounds like it means. You're just like, oh, yeah, who disagrees with that? Yeah, of course, even all lives matter, people would agree with that, right? Like, all lives matter is much less dog whistly and far right than White Lives Matter. It's just sort of a distraction. That's the goal of it, but it's not, like, as overt. Like, We literally just looked at the history of the phrase. Like, you're not going to fool us here, Sydney Watson. Nice try. Your audience may be stupid, but we're not that stupid. We already looked at the background behind that phrase.
Women like men become profanity. I think both work. I think both are offensive to these kinds of people. I guess the most ironic thing, and for me the funniest thing, or the saddest thing, depending on your perspective, is that I don't know how many of you have played Call of Duty or who consistently play it, but if you've been in one of these game lobbies or just been playing the game on multiplayer online in general, you're gonna
Is she gonna make the argument that, like, Call of Duty lobbies are really homophobic? While also actively encouraging the idea that, like, society is very accepting of gay people and homophobia isn't a big deal or a thing anymore, but even if it was, it would be justified? So we're rolling back the idea that trans people and gay people are, like, accepted, and we're accepting the fact that, like, if you're gay and you go into, like, or trans and you go into a game lobby on Call of Duty, you're gonna get slurs hurled at you.
You hear a lot of swearing, you're gonna hear a lot of slurs, and if you don't have a thick skin, you are 100% gonna be offended. It is the verbal Wild West. People—
Dude, she doesn't even know what the fuck she's talking about. She's probably never even heard of Rust. You fucking babies that think Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 lobbies are the peak of internet gaming toxicity. You will learn new slurs on Rust. Children with speech impediments will come along to bully you and teach you new slurs that they're going to call you in Rust. I learned new slurs from children in Rust, chat. As a 22-year-old man, I learned brand new slurs from speech impediment having children in Rust. And listen, it's always kids with speech impediments. I don't know why. FPS Russia went on the same rant on PKA, and I ended up having the same fucking experiences. It's always kids with speech impediments screaming slurs at you in Rust. I don't know why. It's always that.
Do not hold back, and they do not give a crap. It makes me wonder how long it will be before these gaming developers or these gaming outlets, so to speak—
Hey, leave me out of this. There's nothing wrong with having a speech impediment. It's just I don't know why. I don't know why kids who have speech impediments and like to say slurs specifically gravitate towards Rust. Also, slurs sound pretty funny when said with a speech impediment. Let's just be honest. Like, getting called the N-word by a guy who, with the hard R, by a guy who can't pronounce R's, does sound objectively pretty funny. It was a pretty funny experience. Guy just literally was, like, roof camping me from the base across, like, literally right across the road, because I built along the road. Guy was roof camping me from his base along the road with fucking turrets. He set up turrets to roof camp me, and he stood outside my base just yelling and calling me the N-word from outside. That is the kind of shit that happens in Rust.
Start trying to enforce censorship in game chats. It looks like it's already a thing. Intel unveils a tool to censor hate speech in video game voice chat. I'm a fortune teller. Bleeps Central—
No, I'm a fortune teller because I predict things before they happen. You made a pre-made video and then acted like, because the video continuity— this isn't live. You edited that together. You scripted this video. You didn't predict anything.
Interface, I guess the thing that censors people, is—
Remember, guys, hate speech is good to conservatives.
Designed to be easy enough for the average gamer to understand. Well, that's a bold assessment there. It operates via toggles and sliders and allows the player to control exactly how much offensive speech is bleeped out.
Wait, it's not even like an overarching system. It's literally just turning on filters. Wait, so many kids play Call of Duty. Wouldn't Sydney Watson want there to be parental filters? This is parental filters. That's what this is. These are parental filters, pretty much. But you can just put them— it's opt-in. So is she against the ability for parents to make it so their kids can't hear swearing in online lobbies? This is amazing. Like, I imagine there's a lot of parents out there that would be happy to hear they can actually let their kid play Call of Duty, like, public lobbies, because their kid isn't going to be hearing swear words constantly and constantly having slurs yelled at them, because there's an AI, like, built into the game to censor those words. But I guess in this scenario, it has to be bad, because because in this scenario, we're not, like, fear-mongering about children being exposed to vulgar things. Right now, we're fear-mongering about how video games are being destroyed by wokeness. In another issue, like, then they would be basically complaining about this not happening to anything else, pretty much.
Players can choose to hear none, some, most, or all, and under which category of slurs: ableism and body shaming, aggression, LGBTQ+ hate.
I'm gonna guess that aggression means, like, saying I'm going to kill you or like, threatening someone.
Misogyny, name-calling, racism and xenophobia, sexually explicit language, swearing, white nationalism, and every possible variant of the N-word.
I like how she got really mad at white nationalism being included. Sydney Watson used to be open about being a white nationalist before before white nationalist became known as just synonymous with Nazi and white supremacist. Back before the Unite the Right rally and before the Charlottesville, before Charlottesville Unite the Right, and before the Christchurch shooting, when self-proclaimed white nationalists did a bunch of terrorism, white nationalist was seen as this, like, fairly, acceptable position online. Like, you're just an identitarian. You just have concerns about, you know, like white demographics. You just have concerns about white... Like, it was very, very couched in a lot of euphemism, but that euphemism melted away after a bunch of white nationalists just ended up being openly Nazis. And so Sydney Watson stopped calling herself a white nationalist after that, because she realized she was just admitting to being a Nazi after that. But, yeah. That was
How does one exactly bleep out ableism and white nationalism? How is this even real? So there you have it.
I mean,
bleeping out
keywords?
the voice chat. Very good.
Oh my god. Woke game studios decades ago added a mute feature to into games where you play online and they have voice chat. How could they add this mute feature that makes it so you don't have to hear the chat? Woke! Like, this is literally just like a half-on setting for a feature that's existed for a very long time, which is just muting voice chat. Now you can just mute specific things in voice chat, and it's opt-in.
I guess my overall point here is that it's incredibly frustrating and distressing in a lot of ways.
New cool technology gets unveiled that makes people's gaming experience or experience with anything better. This is woke!
Is to watch yet another medium be taken over by the same people who've taken over other areas of entertainment. This is something I actually want to expand on in a deep dive because I have a lot to say about this and a lot of examples that maybe people haven't thought of before.
This wasn't a deep dive?
But I will save that for another video. As per usual, and this is not news to any of you, I think that it's quite clear that a lot of developers and critics are incredibly out of touch with the audiences who actually consume this sort of media.
Why does she keep saying developers? She's so out of touch with the... Like, she's actively accusing game developers and game journalists for being out of touch, while saying it's game developers that are out of touch. If you were even slightly in touch with the gaming industry, you'd know that game developers are, like, never the ones that even the Gamergate tier chuds go after. It's always the publishers and the company, like, and the CEOs and maybe the game director. If they want to make, like, a singular boogeyman to be the bad guy of making a game woke, they'll like pin it on the game director. But going after, like, the devs as, like, an ambiguous concept is, like, if you know anything about how game development even works in modern day gaming, or even anywhere near modern day gaming, like, relatively modern, you would know that, like, this is insane. The idea that, like, I think in her mind, she's legitimately imagining, like, game studios are, like, a bunch of, like, SJW blue-haired nerds drinking soy lattes all day, sitting at their computers, and they're like, okay, 11001001, okay, let's make this character gay. Would you guys like that if we made this character gay? Oh my god, you should totally make that character gay. And then they make the character gay, and then it's like, oh my god, we made the character gay. We have so many woke... That's how she imagines game development goes. When in reality, the way game development actually goes is literally shit tons of different, like, sections. Generally, if we're talking about, like, AAA game development, large studio, etc., like, there's different segments of the developer studio focused on different aspects of game development, whether it be development of the engine, development of assets, art. There's 3D modeling, there's 2D concept artists, there's obviously the scripting. If it's a game that's mocapped, you're basically filming an entire movie through mocap on top of developing a game, like this is the case with God of War. All the cutscenes and interaction are mocap. I cannot... Dude, all of you in chat just interpreted that as being the gay voice. That was me doing like a California woman voice. All of you heard me do like an impression of like a California like game dev lady with blue hair, and you all thought I was doing a gay voice. I think that speaks more to you guys than me. That said, they literally like have different segments all dedicated to these different things, and there are higher ups. Like there are senior developers. There are senior developers at the top of each different area that basically overlook all the independent those workers, and then those people like all of them answer to, but the senior developers are like kind of the ones who carry the message down the pipeline generally for larger studios, all answer to like game directors and like assistant game directors sometimes if there's like another middleman between the game like design leads and the like. There's just so much shit, and then the game director still has to answer to the publisher, and the publisher has different layers of like there's different layers of authority at the game publisher, and at the very top, you've got the people who are shareholders that are making decisions about pretty much everything that flies to determine whether or not their money's worth, their bottom line, is being met. That is the reality of game development, not whatever fantasy land that, like, woke SJW fantasy land that Sydney Watson has imagined in her head of, like, game development studios working and looking.
And play these games. And the reason I personally think this is a massive problem is because these people inevitably go on to make changes to games, or just make games in general, that are unnecessary and inappropriate to suit their own agendas and narratives. Absolutely nothing is sacred and nothing is safe. In the end, I do view this as yet another way for a message to be pushed artificially and to the detriment of gamers all over the place.
Remember, literally all she's talking about here is like game studios deciding to make games a certain way that she doesn't like. And by a certain way she doesn't like gay people are in the game. Like there's gay people, there's pride flags, there's black people and stuff. Like that's the issue. That like she's literally actively saying that there is an issue with artists making art in the way they want to. Like, if you just take everything she says here at face value, assuming everything she's saying here isn't a lie, which all of it is, you take, like, assume everything she's saying is true, and you take it at face value, she is arguing against the concept of game developers being allowed to make the games they want to make.
Now, on that note, and before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder to check out Blissey using the link in the description.
Okay, and now she's gonna shill. Alright, well, now it's my turn to shill. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, subscribe, ring the bell icon, donate, all those good things. I really do appreciate them, regardless of how you support me. It helps out a lot. And with all that said, as always, have a good one.